Hello and welcome to what promises to an insightful session on next-gen payments. For this session, we have with us Tamal Bandyopadhyay, Consulting Editor, Business Standard, in conversation with Ms. Pravina Rai, Chief Operating Officer, NPCI, Arvind Ronta, Head of Products, India and South Asia, Visa, Rahul Charik, co-founder and CTO, PhonePe, Melissa Frankman, founder and managing partner, EMVC. May I now request Mr. Tamal to take over the proceedings.
Hi, very good evening. Good evening for India and for the rest of the world, depending on whatever time zone you are in. Interesting panel on next generation payments, and more interesting than the subject which I found is the gender diversity. We are 2:2, two men and two women. It's very rare for any panel in India. So welcome our panelists, and it's a very nice combination. We have three market players and one entity which actually invests in such kind of payment platforms and all. So welcome Pravina, Melissa, Arvind and Rahul. So let's have a first round in generally how things have changed. And I'll start with Rahul, PhonePe. Give us a sense, because you know in India and the big focus on digitalization happened during demonetization end 2016 and 2017. All of us spoke about digitalization, etc., etc. Of course, that's one of the objectives of demonetization, but we increasingly focused on that during demonetization and after that. And somehow, it was tapering off. I'm not going here to reel out all the numbers and all. But then the COVID, the new world, the new normal has changed everything since end March. The entire payment system in India, we are looking at in a very different way. And when we say we, meaning not only in urban India, even in rural India. So things have changed dramatically. What demonetization could not do, COVID actually had done far more than this. So there's a new world, new payments world is being created. So I'll start with our local PhonePe. I was going through your website. It's our built for India by Indians. Is it something new? We have done this thing by Indians because of our now not so much of liking for the Chinese stuff. That's what you want to emphasize on by Indians, because it's a bit of nationalistic fervor, but that's on a lighter tone. Give us a sense, Rahul, where we are.
Hi, Tamal. Thank you for having us all here. I think it's a great panel and excited to be here. So I'll address your points in two phases. I think one about demonetization and COVID. I think they are very contrasting from the effect that they've had in terms of digitization of India. I think demon was a catalyst for trials at a very, very aggressive pace. Think of it like a very compressed cycle of creating a large number of trials for digital payments because it was extremely necessary. And what it really did as a catalyst was ensure that the education curve in terms of why digital is important, it just accelerated that. And UPI had just started then and got a huge boost. And obviously players like us who are since then itself been built by India for India, not really with any recent event, because we were built over UPI, also benefited. Mm-hmm. I think with COVID, it's slightly different, right? At this point, the awareness about digital payments and how digital payments plays a role was already fairly ingrained, thanks to NPCI, thanks to UPI from NPCI, and thanks to players like us, PhonePe and others. But there were a lot of people who were sitting on the fence, right? In terms of whether it is secure enough, whether it is really needed. So the trials had happened, the education had happened, but there were fence sitters in terms of whether they really need it or not, especially after the, like you said, the waning period where cash got back into the market. I think with COVID, what we are seeing is now there's a genuine need that is being fulfilled. The education has already been done, and you will see that the behavior that is now getting seeded in digital payments specifically because of the current situation will be significantly more sustainable. Because even after a vaccine, even after things come back to a normal, and hopefully it happens sooner than later, there is going to be behavioral change that is going to be lasting, right? I think from that perspective, for sure, we are going to be seeing a sustainable baseline shift in terms of both adoption and continued usage on digital payments.
Thanks, Rahul. So, sort of in cinematic term, that was a trailer demonetization, education, understanding, learning. I call it trailer. And now, actually, the what we will see is the second stage, and from here we'll go forward.
Yeah, in this
You
very
mentioned
dark cloud, I would say that this is a silver lining. Yes.
Okay, fine. So you spoke about UPI and you spoke about NPCI. So Pravina is here. So let's hear. That's a fascinating story. How an Indian entity can actually become so big, which even now thinking to go global. That's what we heard NPCI CEO recently. Beginning 2008, 2010, IMPS started, and then UPI. And I think you crossed 1 billion a few months back, and then April, May, it came down, and then June it came all the way 1.34 billion transactions volume and 2.64 trillion. I mean transaction and 2.64 trillion volume. So that's what NPCI has done to the payment system in India. It's revolutionized, and Visa and Masters, everybody's taking note. I'll come to Arvind later, but tell Pravina your take. Where are we? And is a COVID is a big booster, and what is the new normal in this payment space in India?
Thank you, Tamal, and great to be on this panel. If we look at the journey of NPCI and UPI, of course, it's been sterling and proud and privileged to be part of that journey. But I think primarily what a product like UPI has done is it is removed friction. It has made it easier for the consumer. It has made it easier for the consumer to start using a product and to continuously use the product effortlessly. And then, of course, we've got great players who've taken it from there and created fantastic reach into the system. So as long as we stay with that principle of addressing the needs of the user, and in some way, and this is something we discussed in another panel, reimagining how it needs to work, how that need needs to be addressed, then we've got a, we can resolve for the past, but more importantly, also lay the foundation for the future in terms of how the next generation of payments, will play out from here. Because while UPI is a great story, it's there, on the smartphone, and yes, today we do have a pretty deep smartphone penetration, but we have a lot of users of the smartphone who are not very literate. We have users of course, feature phones. We are more a numerate country than a very literate country. So reading language, etc., is a challenge. So we need to address the needs of consumers beyond what we have done so far, right? And that's really the journey ahead in terms of where we have to go to keep the momentum that we've built so far.
Okay, thanks, Pravina. Thanks. It's very short, but you outlined the challenges, and we have 40 minutes, four of you, so we'll try to get as much information and insight as possible. Arvind, I was reading one of your interviews where somebody asked you, I think that are you being challenged by UPI, tough competition? You said yes, competition is good. Rising tide lifts all boats. So that's the approach of Visa. Good, you are internationally. I'm not getting into all the details. Probably in the products scenario will come that later. But tell me, it's a separate story that for the first time you are being challenged now. You are seeing some kind of competition in India. But that apart, we'll come to the products and other things later. But tell us in this scenario, as we discussed, that first demonetization give a push, but that was a sort of experiment, if I may say so. But now it looks like a permanent thing that we have no choice but to go to the next generation payment system. Branch banking, even ATMs now becoming a passe. So give us a sense with your international experience, what's happening in Indian context.
Thank you, Tamal, and glad to be here on this panel. Just to level set, even pre-COVID, I believed a rising tide lifts all boats. Even so here's the thing. So post-COVID, there's still 5 truths that remain. So before COVID and post-demon, we were getting we were seeing permanent digital trends anyway. Like we were seeing shifts in consumer and merchant behaviors trying to adopt digital payments.
Can
was
you
happening
give us
at
a
pace.
sense? Arvind, can you give us a little more specific? What are the, don't just say what are the changes you are seeing in consumer behavior?
So there are 5 big changes, I would say, between consumers and merchants. Number one, consumers are shifting to digital first commerce, no matter what they're buying, right? So they are getting that. We've seen a flood of first-time digital users during this post-COVID, during the COVID times. They were forced to come online to pay bills and whatnot, right? Number two, we're seeing that sellers were forced to come online, right? So if you're a Kirana store owner, no one is visiting you. So can you work with partners like PhonePe and Paytms out there or Google Pay who are listing their catalogs and order online and complete the fulfillment just virtually through an app without going in a physical environment, right? So the challenge there was, how do these sellers come online? Number three, as buyers and sellers come online, security, transparency in online becomes very important, right? So all of a sudden, you aren't seeing anyone. This is your first time digital transaction, so you want to be safe and secure. Number four would be as sellers and partners as they come online, most of them are in the businesses which they will want to get paid and they want to get paid digitally. For example, a Zomato driver or anyone in the gig economy who would want to be paid digitally, they would want to be paid instantly, right? So that's another number four, the fourth trend we are seeing. And the number fifth is contactless payment. Because of hygiene and it has become such top of mind for people. We are seeing uptake in contactless payment transactions in India. And then what RBI did with allowing even for above 2,000 rupees for tap and pin, I think that's a very positive move. So all in all, I think these are 5 big trends, Tamal. We are already seeing digital transactions take off, and I think that's no surprise. And e-commerce has actually seen a good chunk of growth, as well as that's happening. We are seeing new first-time digital users coming to the platform, so which is also very encouraging.
Excellent. We'll talk a little more on the nuance stuff and the micro issues, but let's ask Melissa. Melissa, you are a sort of odd person out, because these 3 persons who have spoken, they are all the market players, and you are investor. You actually keep a very close eye on who is doing what, and what's that? About 20 million, 25 million. That's what you are investing, right, Melissa? So can you give us a sense, Melissa, when your EMVC, your fund, which has 25 million, looking for the right kind of investment, what are the 4 or 5 things that you look for in that platform, which differentiates that particular platform from others, and you feel confident this platform has a future? Sound? Melissa,
thank you, and it's great to be here with everybody. Good to be with you. Tamal, you mentioned sort of the cinematic arc of digital payments in India. And if Demon was sort of the trailer, we believe that even now, digital payments during COVID time is nowhere near the heroic climax of digital payments in India. These are still the character building moments. And as early stage investors in the market, investing with entrepreneurs at the seed idea whiteboard napkin stage of building on top of the incredible digital infrastructure and stack across India, we see that what is happening currently in today's age is that the core digital payments opportunity of UPI, ably built by NPCI and Pravina and team, enables so many other use cases. And only now are we starting to see many of these use cases in practical ways emerge that wouldn't have been possible if everybody was just building to solve digital payments. And so COVID, to me, this really unprecedented past 3 months, has shown that. We saw lots of entrepreneurs not say, oh no, how do we get everyone to pay digitally? That was already there. And so therefore, things like digital collections, commerce transactions, leveraging voice application, starting to figure out how users can move some of their other hyper-local offline transactions, digital, through commerce, et cetera, have all been accelerated over the past few months in a way that wouldn't have happened if the baseline payments question had not been solved. And so the question of where is the next generation of digital payments going is, how does this deepen even more? India is already a global leader for these types of digital payments. But in terms of the next 400 use cases across all the micro segments of the Indian economy and for Indian users, it's a very interesting, ripe time during these challenging economic climate to solve for that.
No, Melissa, that's fine. Absolutely, that's a nice scenario analysis you said. But what I asked you is this: as an investor, what are the unique qualities that you look in a platform to decide on where to put your money?
So absolutely, we, related back to the general what's happening in the market, is we look for founders that are extremely aware of what core users need and want in the market. So not sitting sort of in their comfy Kormangla office and pontificating about what the rest of India needs, but that are close to users across different segments of the market, understand what the pain points are that are not being solved by sort of the basic infrastructure of UPI being there, and building use cases on top of that. That goes both for sort of functional additions, for instance, companies that are building deep vernacular integration for voice to enable various kinds of transactions, to specific commerce use cases across things like personal finance, what the future of savings, for people that are managing unprecedented risk right now to their livelihoods, what the future of insurance could mean, which is certainly especially enabled by the new recurring payments that UPI just launched.
Thanks, Malika. Yeah, you mentioned a very important point, that the vernacular part, which Praveena also said, that that's a big challenge. So thank you, gentlemen and ladies. So that's the general scenario. Let's get into the specific thing, because the subject is next generation payments. So let's see what are the in terms of crudely put it products, what are the things coming up? Because all of us know that mobile payment, that's the thing. When Reserve Bank of India is extremely stingy 10 years back, how much money you can use through your mobile. And but the past few years, mobile phone has become our bank, and now we are talking about mobile wallet. But beyond that also, so the radio frequency identification on RFI, or loosely you call it what, near field communication, NFC. I remember Arvind, I think you guys, Visa did something during Brazil Olympics for the athletes. You did the payment ring around them, so that this kind of contactless payments can come. That's 2016. Visa was there. You did the sample. So, and I'll start with you. Mobile payments and wallet is known, but when you talk about next generation, the next gen payments, there are many these things using this RFI and NFC. Sorry for using the acronyms, that near field communication, primarily wireless things. So keeping in mind in Indian context, Arvind, and India is one of your global hubs, give us a sense, as a consumer, what can I expect for the next few years?
So, great question. So one, tokenization is sacrificing all the credentials, card credentials out there, to completely devalue those credentials is super important, because you don't want to have your identity or cards lying around in the internet. In India is a huge e-com market, right? And I think in India, if you look at, we introduced tokenization, Google Pay, they're already live. So I think it's Samsung Pay is live in India on tokenization. Contactless app as a use case, both online and offline. Think of this: tokenization is a key technology that's already here. Actually, RBI has allowed us to have device-based tokenization. So those use cases are already flourishing. Where this would scale up is when we get the card-on-file tokenization, because there's still a lot of credentials that people use online in e-commerce, where their cards are lodged in different sites.
Yeah.
What ideally we want that is all those are tokenized, and so there's less risk for the customer, and of course less risk in the ecosystem. Where it could go in 3 years for India. So just to give you stats on the global basis, we surpassed 1 billion tokens globally, right? And I think if you look at the potential in India and how the scale at which we are talking about in India and the e-commerce population, the smartphone population, it won't be hard to imagine that in just 3 years or 3 to 5 years, we would break that bar of 1 billion tokens, potentially in India, because it's just not cards getting tokenized. You can virtually tokenize every account, every bank account, right? So as a technology, I think it's here to stay, and it's got a great potential in securing the ecosystem.
Well, Pravina, let's hear you, because the UPI, actually the combination of debit card and credit card transaction in terms of number, UPI has overtaken that. And as I said, right from IMPS in 2010, and then UPI, and then everybody is talking about, what else new and all. So tell me, sitting in your perch at NPCI, we know that your CEO has spoken about certain global ventures through subsidiaries and all, but I'm not getting into your global footprints. But keeping in mind in Indian context, going beyond mobile and wallets and all, what are the other possibilities you see in terms of in the payment space, which we truly call next generation payments?
Sure, Tamal. So I think I will take this in two perspectives. One is what I call solving for ubiquity, and one is solving for inclusivity. Taking off from some of the things that Arvind mentioned, I think we are very focused on those areas. So there is contactless, there is getting the card into a phone, thus with all the security, enabling the same kind of transactions with high security functions. However, these tend to be very relevant for the large merchant space that we service. So users, using their payment instruments with larger merchants. We believe that we also will be focused on the smaller merchants, be it QR codes or, during the COVID time, this thing called SMS-based payment, so you get an SMS, you click the link, and then you're able to use UPI to make a payment to your local nearby merchant. So those kind of very innovative small merchant solutions are coming up. The B2B space, today a small merchant says, look, I don't want to collect money digitally because, I've got to pay my distributor. I've got to pay my supply chain, in cash or whatever it is. So, how do we also solve for the other side so that merchant is happy to collect and happy to pay, both using digital means. And a number of other industries to address, there is insurance, micro investment. Melissa spoke about the auto pay functionality. So ubiquity of the acceptance of digital payments is going to be key, and we have a range of products in mind. And I will not say just us. I think the industry will need to address each one of these. You can think of them as sort of bastions to address, and unless we address each one of them and solve for them, they will generate the next generation of payments. Inclusivity, we started talking about that. That comes down to simple things like voice-based payments, feature phone payments. How can feature phones get onto the UPI rails, and so that everybody, whatever kind of phone they have, is able to enjoy the convenience of the kind of transactions that a smartphone user today enjoys, and providing hence equitable access to everybody. The right from the premium, super premium, social class, where it's about convenience and something being cool, all the way to where it's really about a livelihood. And it also includes biometric. There are mechanisms where the person absolutely doesn't have a phone or doesn't know how to use it for a purpose like this. Then it's about biometrics. So taking the entire array of both ubiquity and inclusivity, I think, is what the next generation is going to be about.
Thanks, Praveen. So you are saying possibilities are endless, and you did not say it, but I am paraphrasing it in my journalistic way. You are seeing a democratization of that thing. It's not that there'll be any privileged class payments. The new platforms will be for everybody, small merchants, people in the hinterland. There'll be modes will be different, but it will be an umbrella kind of thing where everybody will come under that. That's what he said. So let's talk to Rahul quickly in a brief way. Rahul, you're very interesting background. I think 2012 you started some music download thing called Floit, F-L-O-I-T. I was going through it, it didn't work, and that's how you come to the payment solution. And when you started, you have 4 things in mind: send, spend, manage, and grow. Send, spend, manage, grow. So tell me, I'm sure these are all even relevant and always will be relevant. So quickly, in terms of products, what are the things that you see in the next few years on the newer things?
So send, spend, manage, and grow is the way we look at how we map our consumers' journey with money, right? And that's enabling that at each of these steps: send money, spend money, manage money, and grow money is how we look at the core reason for our existence. Now, I think tokenization as a technology has been there. It's great. NFC as a technology for exchange of information is there. All of these will get used. If I were to take that one thing that is going to change the landscape of payments in the country over the next couple of years, it is basically going to be standing instructions or autopay, right? UPI yesterday announced autopay. Very recently, our regulator, the RBI, has brought about very clear directions in terms of how autopay will operate across instruments, whether it's card when card not present is there, whether it is UPI, whether it is a wallet. I think the singular thing that will change the landscape is the fact if we get even more clarity on all the retail use cases where autopay
Mm-hmm.
is valid, right? The
Mm-hmm.
more we open it up, the more we are going to see significant amount of goodness for the consumer, right? What card on file did for the West, like Arvind said, I think autopay across the instruments with the bank account at the center of it is going to be basically the one that changes the landscape, right? This should not be restricted to insurance repayment. It should not be restricted to bill payment. It should be allowed for a 20 rupee purchase at a Kirana store, right? And India will be very unique because there will be challenges. There's going to be challenges on detecting risk, avoiding fraud. I think the ecosystem is doing a tremendous job in not just catching up, but we're staying ahead of the number of challenges that we do have already, and we'll continue to do that, right? So I think that's the one big thing I'd like to focus on, along with ubiquity and penetration into the feature phone market. In fact, I think Dilip from NPCI spoke about 10 billion transactions
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
2025.
Yeah.
I would say that if autopay across instrument works out fine, a single player like us should shoot for a billion transactions next year through autopay. That's the way to look at how we can
Thanks.
change the landscape.
Thanks, Rahul. So one single thing that you said you identify will be the
Yeah, think about
will be
mobility. You have the Octopus cards in Hong
yeah,
Kong. You
sure.
could just think of changing the landscape with the national
But
mobility card having autopay.
autopay will be the key to the growth of this market and how
Yes.
the entire landscape will change. So Melissa, from Vancouver to India, how many years now in India now?
I'm in the US right now. Been
Okay,
over
no, but
15 years. Yeah.
15 years. So no, I'm getting a sense that you are not a fly by night like kind of thing. Come to India and go back. You're pretty familiar. Earlier, you was a part of US India Business Council, right? So India is something very close to your heart. So tell me, what are the things that you want to see in the payment landscape in India? You don't like the armchair theoreticians who in their air conditioned office they do. You like people who go to the field and find out and work with people and find solutions and all. That's good, that's great, and that's how you decide where to invest your money. So if I ask you, how do you want to see the payment landscape in India, what would be your 2-minute answer?
So, I mean, in 30 seconds, it's already been said. I absolutely concur in terms of the next. So much of this has already been solved, and there's so much innovation happening for the top maybe 50 million citizens of the country. And so figuring out ways for both large companies as well as many startups in the market that are innovating to continue to work on expanding access to these types of products for different use cases across the market is massive. And I do think that the sort of next wave beyond all of this happening for emerging markets across the world to watch and learn closely from what's happening in India in terms of bringing these use cases to impact another billion people beyond India in terms of what's possible with when these things are democratized and become sort of a public good for the country.
So you are saying actually India could be a beacon for the entire world. Every country will look up to India, what's happening in the payment space. That's what you mean, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Is
I
that
mean,
so?
that's the thesis for our investment, but also for many entrepreneurs that we meet across the country in tier 1, 2, 3 cities. They're inspired by seeing how far ahead India is in this journey of product development, inspired by companies like PhonePe and others. And there's much to be done in terms of kind of going deeper into the specific product innovation that they create.
Excellent. Excellent, Melissa. Just one academic curiosity. In this space for startups, in the payment space, out of 10, how many actually succeeds? 1, 2, 3,
I'd say
how many out of 10?
the
From
rate
your
is higher
experience.
than in other spaces, maybe 3, 4.
Okay. Okay. 3, 4. Okay. Good. Good to see.
That's a
So
pretty
we have,
pretty decent number.
that's pretty decent.
Exactly.
We have 9 minutes. We have 9 minutes left. So let's have a few questions. We have actually many questions, but most of them we already answered.
Carol, there's something I just
So-
want to leave before you jump into the questions, if that's okay.
Please,
So while we spoke of the product roadmap, if there is one thing that I think we need to absolutely solve to get to the point where that 10 rupee transaction happens invisibly for the customer, right? The invisible payments is like the ultimate
Holy grail.
gold standard, I think, that everyone wants to get to.
Sure.
We need to save the consumer, from the consumer, which means that irrespective of whether the consumer is aware, gullible, prone to various kind of threats in the market, the consumer still needs to be safe. So if we can get to that point where we have mechanisms, be it artificial intelligence and various tools
Absolutely.
and techniques, without of course compromising privacy and all of that stuff. If we get to that point, I think we've really hit the gold standard on the back of which.
You're talking about cyber fraud, right?
I'm talking about very simple kind of fraud. I mean, cyber fraud, I think it's a very big word. Just simple stuff that happens.
I'm a victim of this. On 16th June, I became a victim.
Tamal, I think there are a few anecdotal cases, but I think it's about really having a framework that creates a very strong layer of protection. And I think then we can jump to the next trillion.
It's an important point, Tamal. Just to piggyback
please.
Saying, I think this thing is called authentication, right? So what the knowing who it is who's making the transaction and knowing it with a degree of certainty instills more confidence, of course, in consumer, but also on all the parties, right? So that I think is what Rahul is talking about, standing instruction. As the friction gets rid of in digital, the authentication becomes even more important. So example you're probably quoting is you're part of some phishing or some type of a fraud that happens if the authentication layer is broken. And I think there are things around risk-based authentication that could be brought into the country, and some players are already working through it. Regulator is looking at it. I think that's needed as we think about digital commerce.
Absolutely. Quickly, a few questions. So, and this is meant for anybody. So just raise your hand and you answer. Let's not waste time. It's a very predictable thing, the role of blockchain in the entire thing. What do you feel about it? Anybody would like to talk about blockchain in the payment business thing? Anybody would like to talk?
I think on blockchain specifically, right? Most people associate blockchain with cryptocurrency, and it seems to end there, right? Yes, cryptocurrency has a role to play as and when there is more clarity from the regulator in terms of how cryptocurrencies can be used and what are the right use cases and what are the regulations around it. I think it will definitely come to the fore. But I think we need to look at blockchain even beyond that, right? I think blockchain as a technology has much more wider use cases, from ledger management to becoming the right vault. The federated model for ensuring that some of your data, whether it's policies, whether it's deeds, etc., to be actually stored and locked away in a manner that it cannot be tampered. I think we need to start looking at blockchain from that perspective more immediately than trying to actually focus on cryptocurrency.
There are just two real use cases on blockchain.
Quickly, Arvind.
Payments, right? Business to business payments. It suffers from lack of transparency. There's a lot of lack of clear detailing on who's getting paid for what. blockchain, and because this ledger technology allows you to have a full record.
Absolutely.
The other use cases are cross-border payments. And actually, a lot of folks are already working through it. So it's nothing new, but the scale is yet to be seen, and especially in India. But I think those were the two big use cases for payments.
Well, one question is this, any of you feel free to answer. What is the status of neobanks? Essentially, like, do any one of you feel that this is the time India should actually welcome a digital-only bank?
Yeah, so I think it's already happening in many parts of the world.
Yes.
So digital bank licenses have already been given out. In India, I think special category licenses like small finance banks, payment banks are already in place.
No, but they are not digital only. They're not digital only.
Yeah.
The normal.
Yeah, but I guess we have an approach of certain category of banks. So we have that history behind us. So it's very possible, and I think it will be a move that could very well create a good amount of innovation in the market, because it straddles the compliance framework that really is so important from a bank standpoint, and opens up when you say pure digital, it takes away all the burden of running physical infrastructure, and can make people reimagine solutions very differently.
So you think it should be, the regulator should be open to the idea for giving licenses to pure play digital bank, right? That's what Pravina you are saying?
Yep.
Now we have 3 minutes I think left. Yeah. So let me ask you, all of you, a simple question. We are talking about newer payments, the new landscape of payments and all. Now India opened up payments bank. I mean, there is so many guys, they ask for licenses, but many of them who didn't turn up for actually to set shops. And those who have started, I'm not very sure they are very happy the way things are progressing. And in fact, Reserve Bank of India has now opened up and said that, look, if you guys are doing well and after a few years you want to convert yourself into a regular bank, we are welcome the idea. We will welcome you, provided your track record is pretty good. So which essentially means this, I think we have overestimated the space for payments bank. But whereas as a startup and other things, there are many guys are in the payment space, but not in the form of a payments bank. So is there any kind of it sounds to me like a puzzle. Can any of you volunteer to talk about this?
I think that it will be a really interesting next 1 to 2 years, maybe 1 to 5 years long term, but things move so quickly in the market. Let's be realistic and say 24 months of some consolidation, but also partnerships that wouldn't have otherwise happened. So somewhat traditional institutions, maybe in kind of last mile regions in India, starting to work with pure digital players to kind of level up their product and user experience. Some of those conversations are just starting to happen now, but it's very early days in terms of what's possible to meld the two. A lot of the things we've talked about on this panel are converging toward kind of full stack better solutions for consumers who are the same consumers that the payments banks or small finance banks are targeting.
Anybody else want to add anything?
I think to what Melissa is saying, what the payments bank was expected to do primarily was around more financial inclusion, access of banking to tier 3, etc. What different things like the Jandan Yojana of opening bank accounts, UPI democratizing payments, it's effectively unbundled the payments bank, and what the payments bank could achieve is now being achieved through other routes. Bank accounts are all pervasive and payments is all pervasive through UPI. So I do believe that at some point it kind of got unbundled and the solution that was supposed to get delivered got delivered through other means.
Thanks. Subject is that we could have gone on, but we have almost closed the time. So I'll ask just one sentence each. We spoke about the landscape, how it's changing payment space, but during COVID time, how your life's landscape has changed. One by one, just give one sentence. Anything new, different you have done in the past 4 months, 5 months? Arvind, you are smiling, starting with quickly.
As you can see, I've grown a long beard.
Okay. Anything else?
Spent a lot of time with my kids, which was amazing.
Melissa?
This is the longest I haven't traveled in my life, and in my adult life. So it's been interesting to live in Zoom land in India, but also be able to have more time to think without all the travel.
Pravina?
I think I've gotten back to some fitness that the crazy world of payments doesn't usually permit you, but I don't know whether it's going to last.
Okay, I think all of you should be fit because payment system has to be fitter and bigger. So with that note, we have exactly 7:10. Thank you guys. Thank you audience, and stay safe. Goodbye from my side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamal.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
And with
Bye-bye.
that, we conclude this session.
Bye.
Thank the panelists for their valuable time and insights that surely enriched us all. Thank you all. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.